Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Very glad to have you with us for the Friday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Yes, we've made it again, and rest up because next week's the Democratic Convention, and Jim will be in Chicago, and we'll have him most of next week to offer his analysis of that. But it's going to be a crazy week, I'm sure, in a number of ways, from protests to whatever else they throw at you, Jim. So get your snoozes in now.
Not only that, I've been informed that I've been invited to appear on CNN. And I know listeners are huge fans of that network, both Tuesday night and Wednesday night, between the 11 o'clock and midnight hour, assuming no one goes on the Trumpian schedule for speaking. So tune in if you can stand it. I imagine I'll be on a panel, and we'll see how things go. But, you know, I love late nights and getting up to write a morning newsletter the next day. So, only good news, Central Time Zone. So at least I got a little bit, 1 hour back from where it otherwise would be.
Yes. All right. Well, we look forward to that. We still have no good martinis, which is sad, but we do have a good appetizer, which is a follow-up to Monday's actual good martini when we told you that Virginia did the responsible thing and went through their voter rolls and found tens of thousands of people who shouldn't still be on there. Most of them were dead people. Some 80,000 dead people have now been taken off the rolls. But they also found more than 6,300 non-citizens registered, as well as some people who no longer live in Virginia and are registered to vote elsewhere. Well, another state has done that, not one that would be considered a toss-up state, but it's still good government. The AP with the story that Alabama has now identified 3,251 people who will receive letters notifying them that their voter registration status has been made inactive because they also have been identified as non-citizens. Now, just like Virginia, Alabama residents who are given this notice have a opportunity to appeal, to show up and prove their citizenship and so forth. Nonetheless, you've got all sorts of folks on the left saying that this is an abomination. They quote this guy, Jonathan Diaz from the Campaign Legal Center, who said that this announcement undermines public confidence in the integrity of elections and is a disproportionate response to a relatively rare phenomena. It's like using a bazooka to kill a cockroach. So, Jim, I'm not sure how it hurts integrity of elections when you're getting rid of people who shouldn't be on the voting rolls, but whatever.
First of all, so when this guy sees a cockroach, does he just ignore it? He's like, no, look, it's a relatively small cockroach, and therefore we don't need to do anything about it. I'm not going to. Second of all, what is the bazooka like? What is the collateral damage that is being done by this metaphor? It doesn't work on any level. Secondly, like the idea this is disenfranchising. Indeed, it is disenfranchising people who are not legally allowed to vote. That seems like, your non-citizens should not be voting. And second, of course, there should be an appeals process. There is an appeals process. If there's some sort of paperwork snafu or something where somebody checked the wrong box and the federal government thinks you're not a citizen, very simple. You go, you provide proof of citizenship, presto changeo, you're back on the rolls. Everything is hunky-dory. And, it's not, when he says, it's a relatively small problem, 3,200 people, not exactly, exceptionally rare. And I don't know about you, Greg. I mean, thankfully, everyone can rest easily. Alabama will not go blue because of voter fraud this year.
You would think not. You would think not. So, we'll just put the warning out there right now. If you are president or a nominee of a major party for president or a presumptive nominee of a major party for president, buckle up. We've got a lot to say about all three of you today. So let's start with the Democrats and their presumptive nominee, Kamala Harris. We talked a little bit yesterday about her plan, quote unquote, to address high prices. And it's, of course, to demonize corporate America and say that they're charging too much, and she's going to go after illegal price gouging. We talked about all that sort of stuff. But now this morning, more of her economic plan has been revealed. And it's a lot of big government intrusion into our lives, including $25,000 to help people buy their first homes, which, as just about everyone has pointed out, means that home prices are going to go up by roughly $25,000. She's also trying to grease the skids for more home construction with a $90 billion tax break for home building companies. Then there's also the price caps, price controls, Jim, that one of your colleagues at the Washington Post certainly devastated today, because the bottom line here on all this stuff, whether you're talking about nuts and bolts items that we all need to survive, like groceries and gas and so forth, or whether you're talking about big ticket items like new homes or something in the middle like prescription drugs, the smartest way for this to play out is to let the market decide. And like a big government Democrat, Kamala Harris has no interest in that. She wants the government putting its thumb, its forefinger, and probably its middle finger on the scale as much as humanly possible here.
That is a lot more discussion of fingers in this segment than I expected, Greg, but I'm just going to observe, taking them in order. The $25,000 for first-time home buyers. Out of curiosity, why? I mean, I suppose second home buyers, it's supposedly easier because you're selling your first home to pay off the remaining mortgage. Apply that to your second one. But I'm sure every second home buyer is kind of like, what do I do? Why am I not special? Why don't I get this second thing? If you want prices to go down, you need to increase supply, which we'll talk about in a second, and you have to reduce demand, or preferably both. This is actually increasing demand. This is handing out lots more money, so people have more money to spend. So as we see in every other case where you subsidize demand, prices will go up. This is going to have the exact opposite effect of what she claims she wants to do. It'll be popular, and much like the no tax on tips is designed to win the state of Nevada. Apparently, Kamala is giving us $25,000. This is great. And then you'll find out that, if not $25,000, but the prices will go up significantly because more buyers will have more money in their pocket. There's nothing in there to put downward pressure on prices. On home construction, on paper, I guess you could say this is either the best or the least bad part of it, because it is an effort to increase supply. I'll give them a molecule of credit for that. But I'll also point out that, she wants America should build 3 billion new housing units. Now, this is a big deal because back in March, Joe Biden said America should build 2 million new housing units. So, and as we all know, if the president says you should do something, it happens, right? Automatically. Oh, actually, no, this isn't the way it works. But I should point out, by the way, that the U.S. usually in a given year builds anywhere from 1.4 million to 1.6 million. So by itself, it's not like this edict from on high is actually increasing things that much. But the idea is to give home building companies a tax credit. And I should point out, this is not a deduction from their taxes. This is, if you happen to get to a zero, you'll get more money on this. I don't think these companies will get to zero on their corporate taxes. But the point is that this headline, you could just as easily write the headline, Kamala Harris offers home builders a giant $90 billion tax cut. Now, fine, but I just want to point out that why is it okay for the Democrats to cut taxes on big companies? Oh, because they're going to build, affordable housing. Oh, okay. All right, fine. Yeah, we will see, by the way, if they happen to do this. What is holding up the construction of housing units? Is it that it's not financially feasible, that the taxes are too high? Or is it zoning? Or is it restrictions? Is it not in my backyard? I think there's a little more complicated than it is to that. And then finally, on the groceries, this is straight up price controls. It never works. It has backfired everywhere it's been tried. And it was, I am very happy with what I write over at the Washington Post, but Catherine Rampell, pardon me. Catherine Rampell's the headline, when your opponent calls you communist, maybe don't propose price controls. Greg, that is just chef's kiss. That, I get good headlines. That is a masterful headline, instantly grabs your attention and summarizes a very coherent, and Rampell is not right of center as far as I know.
No.
She's she knows her stuff on economics and she knows what works and what does not, and points out that this is actually more likely to cause either shortages, supply chain. Because once you tell people, why do prices go up? Well, because demand is up and supply is low. Apply it to anything you want, whether it's a thing of broccoli or a Mickey Mantle baseball card, right? Mickey Mantle baseball cards are rare, so the price is very high. If you happen to have the Greg Jeffries rookie card, which was everywhere in 1986 or 87 when he was with the New York Mets, and everybody wanted to get them, and you have 9 of them, and they're all for sale for less than $1 because Greg Jeffries never turned into anything, then all of a sudden the price goes down, right? Meanwhile, the Upper Deck Ken Griffey Jr. card, that one I only had 1 of. But anyway, we're getting to veer back towards topic. Instead of increasing supply and lowering demand, now the idea is, we're going to somewhere in the federal government, they're going to decide what the appropriate price for broccoli is, or bread, or meat, or any of these other products. Oh, by the way, price fixing is already illegal, and the whole thing is I'm going to crack down on price fixing. What is your day job? What is your job title right now? If you actually have an idea to do this, why don't you do something on this? Why haven't you done this for the past 3.5 years? As I laid out yesterday's podcast, this is price fixing and gouging is not why prices are high. It's because during COVID and after COVID, the federal government's threw like 5 to 6 trillion in new money into the economy. We did not have an equivalent increase in goods and services, and the value of the money went down. Prices went up. That's the way it works.
Yeah, the idea that, we'll just force you to sell it for less doesn't work. You're going to get shortages.
People stop doing it at that point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here's how Rampel puts it. This is such good writing. It's hard to exaggerate how bad this policy is. It is, in all but name, a sweeping set of government-enforced price controls across every industry, not only food. Supply and demand would no longer determine prices or profit levels. Some far-off Washington bureaucrats would. The FTC, Federal Trade Commission, would be able to tell, say, a Kroger in Ohio the acceptable price it can charge for milk. At best, this would lead to shortages, black markets, and hoarding, among other distortions seen previous times countries tried to limit price growth by fiat. It could not be clearer that this is a horrible, horrible idea. All right, Jim, I'll tell you what's a great idea, though, and that's Lumen and making sure that the food you do get, when supply meets demand, so you actually are still able to buy food, meets what your metabolism needs. Are you burning fat? Are you burning carbs? Well, Lumen will tell you. When you wake up in the morning, take a deep breath, then breathe into your Lumen. It'll tell you whether you're burning fat or carbs, and then give you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, and even stress management.
Your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food that you eat into the fuel that keeps you going. Because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a whole bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, and even better sleep. Lumen can even give you recommendations to improve your metabolic health.
And ladies, it can even help you track other aspects of your health that I promise you don't want Jim and me talking about. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/3ml to get 15% off your Lumen. That is lumen.me/3ml for 15% off your purchase. Again, that's lumen.me/3ml. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. All right, we've talked about Kamala Harris. We'll talk about Joe Biden in just a few minutes. Now it's time to talk about Donald Trump. Trump has a tendency to wing it, and sometimes his mouth gets him in a whole lot of trouble. And I think that's what happened here as he was trying to honor Miriam Adelson, who's been a longtime Republican donor. Her husband, Sheldon Adelson, was a casino mogul in Las Vegas, lived to, I think, past 90 years old, died a few years ago, but she's still a very active donor with a lot of money to give out. And so Trump gave her the Presidential Medal of Freedom at some point. And then yesterday, he was speaking about Miriam Adelson. I think she was even at the event and was talking about the fact that he gave her the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And you can quibble about whether he should give a big donor the Presidential Medal of Freedom, but presidents have tended to do that sort of thing over time, or at least people that they are ideologically in sync with. But then Trump decided to compare the Presidential Medal of Freedom with the Medal of Honor.
I have to say, Miriam, I watched Sheldon sitting so proud in the White House when we gave Miriam the Presidential Medal of Freedom. That's the highest award you can get as a civilian. It's the equivalent of the Congressional Medal of Honor, but civilian version. It's actually much better because everyone gets the Congressional Medal of Honor. That's soldiers. They're either in very bad shape because they've been hit so many times by bullets, or they're dead. She gets it, and she's a healthy, beautiful woman. It's very... And they're rated equal.
Not rated equal. One is the highest military honor you can get. One is the highest civilian honor that the country can bestow. Jim, as someone who interviews veterans, some of whom have given so much, some who have sustained major injuries, some who have received medals of honor despite not receiving major injuries, but just their courage under fire is inspiring to all. And of course, those who have given the last full measure. I've spoken with people who lost their friends, some of whom received a Medal of Honor, some lost in service to this country. Just to, it seems, flippantly compare these two things is disgraceful. If a Democratic president said that, I think you and I would be absolutely furious. And so if a Republican former president and a guy who wants to be president again, wants to be commander in chief, makes this comparison, it needs to be called out because I think that's disgraceful.
Yeah, it's infuriating. It's inexcusable. And among other reasons, look, we're, now in the mid to late summer of a presidential election year. Things are very intense. And, listeners to this podcast know, not a fan of Trump. Never have been. And why aren't you backing? Well, because he keeps doing stupid things like this. No one ordered him to do this. No one, and so this was not in the prepare. He just suddenly decided, I'm going to compare the Medal of Honor and I'm going to compare the Medal of Freedom. And I'm going to let everyone know which one I think is better. And I don't think that is a, there are a lot of, one, it's tasteless and, completely uncalled for and more than a little offensive. And what's more is that we're now in a news cycle discussing the military service of Tim Walz, Minnesota governor and Democratic vice presidential nominee. I hear people arguing that, the criticism of Walz hasn't done any damage. And the polling numbers indicate he's got a more favorable than unfavorable. Still a lot of people who don't have an opinion on him. You have J.D. Vance, who served in Iraq, wasn't under fire, but who seems like a good carrier of this message, somebody who has got a legitimate one to point out that, look, at minimum, Tim Walz had a lot of people describing him as a veteran of Afghanistan, and he was not. He was not in Afghanistan. He operated over in Europe in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, we should salute him for doing that. It's great. He was never deployed out there. Did leave right before the orders came through for him to go there. I'll let other folks. But and by the way, I've heard people arguing, it's not having any effect. I think if you talk to veterans communities, there are some people who may have never been willing to vote for the Democratic ticket. There might have been some folks who were interested and would vote for him. I don't think there are a lot of veterans who are like, this is all hunky-dory. I think that maybe it's not a sin of commission, it's a sin of omission if other people describe you as a veteran of Afghanistan when you weren't there. And by the way, I laid this out in the Morning Jolt. It didn't happen just once or twice. We're looking at now at least 7 or 8 times. Newspaper articles, people introducing him for speeches, things like that. They all described him as a veteran of being in Afghanistan, and you shouldn't do that. It would have hurt Tim Wells say, no, I'm sorry, that's a mistake. I was never in Afghanistan. Do you think anybody would have not voted for him if he had done something like that? Do you think anybody, it would take so little? And so I think that's what really is sticking in people's craws. Well, for Trump to go rambling about the Medal of Honor versus the Medal of Freedom doesn't help. Doesn't help with any of this kind of stuff. And it's kind of infuriating that why aren't you doing more? I can't help Trump. Right? I write all kinds of stuff that's critical of Kamala Harris, but I can't stop him from going out there in front of the cameras and saying stupid things that offend people and that bother people and make them less inclined to vote for him. So if you're mad about this, don't get mad at Greg and I for talking about it. If they had averted their eyes and pretended they hadn't seen it, this wouldn't have done any damage. No, get mad at Donald Trump because he can't go 2 days without saying something like this. And I got to tell you, there's not a single advisor in the Trump campaign who's saying, hey, go out and compare the Medal of Honor and the Medal of Freedom. Go tell people you didn't know Kamala Harris was black. Go out there and, spend an hour and a half on your convention speech and bring up the Green Bay Packers. These are all self-inflicted wounds. These are all dumb decisions and not a single, you go to Fox News, everybody's begging him, stick to policy. And, he'll do it for a while. You can see it's not his heart isn't in it. He really wants to go on and on about crowd size and how they're using AI to alter the images.
These are our greatest Americans who have put their lives on the line, and certainly the ones who receive the Medal of Honor, whether it's in person or posthumously. And voters can obviously gauge on policy. I think if you were to ask most veterans and most active duty military, I think they would lean towards Trump because of policy and other things. But when it comes to this sort of thing, you simply have to demonstrate that you understand the gravity of your role, the gravity of what these people have sacrificed, and what it means to our country. And people who get the Presidential Medal of Freedom have done great things in their lives too, but I don't believe there's anything greater in terms of service to country than what these people have done. So to even put them on that par, or in some ways, because there's no permanent scars, that somehow the Presidential Medal of Freedom is even more impressive, it's disturbing. All right. You mentioned AI and crowd size at airports and other things. AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It has the potential to transform every industry, altering the way we work, live, and interact with the world. It's revolutionizing every industry with billions of dollars being invested. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power, so how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? Well, I'll tell you how. Take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/martini.
It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. OCI offers a complete range of cloud services to meet your needs, whether it's on-premises, hybrid, multi-cloud, or public. Its global network and flexible options can tackle your toughest business challenges. OCI is a single platform to fix your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. And it has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds. All at one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing. Industry leaders rely on Oracle. We're talking about companies like Zoom and Mazda and Toyota.
Now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. Do more and spend less like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic. Take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/martini. That's oracle.com/martini. oracle.com/martini. All right, we've mentioned Kamala, we've mentioned Trump. Now it's on to Joe Biden, who's technically still president, Jim, but he's clearly not calling the shots here. But in the addendum...
The technical. He is legally still the president of the United States.
He still need his signature for stuff. But in your addendum in the Morning Jolt today, you referred to a Bloomberg story, which, to be honest, has happened a lot of times, long before Joe Biden stopped running for president. I specifically remember it on Taiwan, but there's a whole lot of other issues. So what's your message for Maduro was the question from the reporters. What's your message for Maduro? Do you support new elections in Venezuela? I do. And then the White House on Thursday walked back President Joe Biden's apparent suggestion that Venezuela hold a new election after the comment prompted questions about the U.S. position on a July vote that has consistently said Nicolas Maduro's regime rigged the elections. A spokesperson for the White House's National Security Council said Biden intended to speak to the absurdity of Venezuelan President Maduro failing to come clean after claiming victory in the July 28th vote, with data suggesting that opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez prevailed. And so, once again, you got people in the National Security Council going, he said what? Draft a statement. Jim, keeps happening.
For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power. Now, let us be clear. The president was not calling for regime change. He was simply saying that Vladimir Putin must not remain in power, which would kind of be a regime change. We saw a bit of this with Trump as well. We see this regularly with Biden. And what I kind of, besides the usual shaking of my head, which is really great audio for a podcast, there's the recognition that this is why it's not good. Like, ideally, a president would go out there regularly, maybe not every day, but, once every 2 days, once every 3 days, a couple times a week, go out, take questions. Maybe not get a whole bunch of questions. Like, maybe, was Biden confused or there were other questions? You look at the transcript, there's a couple in there. But really, you'd say, you'd speak at length about what your policy is. I think the longer you talk about it, the more detail you go in. You're probably the idea, like when your answer is, no, I don't want to see another election because I don't trust these guys to run fair elections, you wouldn't come out and say yes, right? That would probably help a great deal. But the other thing is also just the idea that I think Biden walks around in this fog of confusion and doesn't know what his administration's policy is on something like this, and that's how you end up with that. Or he gets Grandpa gets confused and fired up, and he calls for Putin to be deposed and regime change. By the way, I'd love to see Putin go, but I don't think that we should go around saying this is a U.S. policy priority because it isn't. We're not taking, as far as I know, we're not taking any serious effort to remove Putin from power. And I really don't think we should, as tense as things are. And the second thing is just like ideally you have clarity about what your thinking is and what your policies are, what you actually want to do. And I don't think we've had that. I don't know if we've ever had that in Biden. If we ever did, it was only in the very beginning of his administration. And it's been a steady decline ever since then. So, but look, these are the leadership options we have, America. Harris, Trump, and for the next couple of months, as far as we know, Biden.
Between 10 and 4. Jim,
Between 10 and 4, yes. Yeah.
Please be
10
safe.
4, good buddy.
Please be safe in
I
Chicago.
just want to point out, I go to Ukraine. I go to all kinds of places, and Greg's like, yeah, it's going to be fine. You're going to Chicago? Jim, my prayers are with you. Wear your flak jacket. Be careful.
And take lots of pictures of the Bulls championship banners. That's all I really want as my souvenir. So, Jim, you'll be traveling on Monday. We'll talk to you Tuesday and the rest of next week. See you then.
See you Tuesday, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Do subscribe to the podcast if you don't already, and tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch Podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a terrific weekend, and join us again on Monday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.